It's hard to believe, but it's time to decorate for Christmas 2020. What a year it has been.
About 2 years ago, I was in St. Jacobs, Ontario, and saw ornaments hanging in a beautiful shop that looked very much like this. And those ornaments were $89.99. Well, I bought this form last year at the Dollar Tree in their after Christmas sale for 25 cents. Such a good deal, I bought 2 of them. So if you want to see how I created this with very little money, stay tuned. So let me show you what I used to make this happen. So obviously you're going to need some sort of a form, and mine is made out of wood. I painted my form with a couple of coats of this spray paint. It's called 24 karat pure gold spray paint, just because I know that if you don't paint the wood beforehand, nothing adheres very well to it. So I like this spray paint and used it. You're also obviously going to need some Mod Podge. I did use some white paint because on the back side I use these little snowflakes, and these are from Michael's. They come in a pack that looks like this, and I did paint them white. I used some gold glitter. This is the Martha Stewart Extremely Fine Glitter from Michael's. I also went to the fabric store here, and I just bought some trims. So you'll just notice here I have a variety of trims in golds and creams. You're going to need some fabric scissors so that the trims don't fray. I also have some sequins that I actually got with the Pat McGrath eyeshadow palette, and I wasn't going to throw those away, so they actually worked out perfectly. I found these pretty little gold sequins at the fabric store for 80 cents a pack, so I use those. And I have some pearls from Michael's, a pack of pearls, and as well you will need glue sticks and a glue gun. And because the ones that were hanging in the window, I believe had some fabric on them, I couldn't find anything at the fabric store that I thought would work. So I thought, why not use napkins and just Mod Podge them on? So I happen to have these in my stash, and that's where I began. So I'm going to zoom you right in. I forgot to mention as well that I'm also using wrapping paper for the back end. I was going to do the same thing on each side, but then I thought, do I really need to go to all that effort for both sides? And I'm not going to tell you where these are going to go, but I do need it, in case things move around, I do need to ultimately make sure that both sides look pretty. You'll have to come back next week to see exactly where I'm going to put these. Yes, I know it's only October, and yes, Harold and I have just barely begun our Christmas decorating. I'll talk to you more about that next week. So I'm just putting a light coat of Mod Podge on. Then I'm taking the wrapping paper that I cut out. This is a better quality wrapping paper. It's thicker, and I just traced it. Now I'm going to pop it on. Make sure it covers quite well. Then I'm going to use some sort of a straight edge. This I actually use to make waffles, and I'm just going to push it down to get all of the bubbles out, or as many as you can. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm going to have things covering it, so if there's a few bubbles, the world certainly will not end. Okay, now that that's on, you'll notice there's a few bubbles, but again, you don't see them when it's hung. And I'm just going to take these little snowflakes that I've already pre-painted white and then put some gold sparkle on. I used 2 coats of white craft paint, again from Dollarama. And I'm I'm just going to glue these on. So you can see I've already begun putting the pearls on. These pearls are self-adhesive pearls, but I find that if I don't use glue on them, they actually aren't on for the long haul. So you'll notice what I'm doing. I'm sort of staggering them. They're really pretty. So simple. Let me finish putting these on and I'll be right back. Now this side is a little more complicated. So to give this more of a fabric look, what I did was I actually used quite a heavy coat of Mod Podge. Then I placed my napkin down and put another fairly heavy coat on the top because I wanted it to look more like fabric. Then I simply glued these little pearls and sequins on, and I'm just going to quickly show you how I finished off this edge. So all I did was I take some of this Mod Podge, pop it in here. This doesn't need to be thick at all. Then I take some of these sequins. I just start placing them on. So easy. Just this sort of gives it just a little bit more of a designer touch. And again, because I always want to recycle stuff, and I remember when I got these, I thought, perfect. So that's all you're doing, and in no time they are completely stuck. Nothing moves. Now, once I'm finished this, I just have to let that dry, but while I'm working, this can still dry. Now, if you use really thin sequins like this, you don't even need to put another coat of Mod Podge on top. I've washed my brush out because I reuse these brushes all the time, sealed up my Mod Podge, and now I'm going to begin with the trim. Now this particular trim, I loved part of it, and part of it not so much. So I'm going to start by cutting this, and what I do is I lay it on and I figure out exactly where to cut so that it sits nicely on. I do the exact same thing on this side. Now I will be covering the edges as well with another thing, so it doesn't matter if it kind of goes over just a tad. All right, let me just sort of pop these together and I'll be right back. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a thin bead, very thin bead of hot glue down. Right on the fabric. Flip it over and line it up to my cut lines as much as possible, right to my cut lines. And then I can straighten out these little sequins later. So you see how simple that is? Glues down easily. Then I'm going to take this next piece and do the exact same thing. All right, the next piece goes on in the exact same fashion. I'm covering up much of the gold fabric because I wasn't wild about that color of gold. And so that really all you're seeing is the sequins. I'm just going to cut my next one, and again, you'll notice all I'm doing here is holding it on and cutting right with the board, right with the actual ornament. Now, one of the things that I quickly learned was that you really do need something flatter like this one, because if you have everything that is thicker and layered, like the pearls and the other piece, that what you'll find is it becomes too thick and bulky. So this actual flat piece works beautifully. Now this piece is actually my favorite piece. It has a stretch to it though, so it's a little bit harder to work with. But I thought it looked so vintage, so Victorian. I just love it. So that pops down pretty easily too. But of course you just have to make sure you're stretching it out before you begin the cut. So I'm just attaching my next piece, which is again that cream one, which looks so, so pretty. Pushing everything down so that you can see the layers and they're very subtle. It's time for another flat piece, as I just said. Again, so it doesn't become quite so bulky. And if you find like this one is, that it's a little bit over the edge, again, it's so easy. You just take it and trim it right then and there. And you might just have to add a little bit more glue to the end, just to make sure everything is sitting down. And voila. So easy. And when I tell you, although it obviously isn't an exact replica of what we saw in St. Jacobs, it's pretty close. I wish I would have taken a picture at the time. I'll be right back. Now the last piece just pops right on top. So easy. Covering up again, just take your end and do some trimming. Now the next thing I'm doing is I'm just taking some of these little circular discs that I bought and just gluing those down. Then I'm going to take some of the larger pearls in the pack and make a row of those as well. I'd have to poke a hole to make sure that the back. So all I did is I took my ornament hook and popped that through. And these ornament hooks I bought at Walmart last year. Again, pretty, kind of fancy. Now I'm just going to take a little bit of Mod Podge again and sort of tap that in here. Thin layer. Take my gold glitz, Martha Stewart sparkle, and just add that on. You'll notice I'm just doing this over a little tiny bowl. So that I can just put that back in. So we'll let that dry for a few minutes and I'll be right back. The bottom is pretty much the same process as the top, except I started with a flat piece and ended with some sequins. And I'll just take this one sequin here, glue it down here. It ended up getting cut in the process, but that's okay. Because again, nobody's going to see that little piece there. So that's that end. All I'm going to do is put a pearl here and I'll be right back. So this is the finished product on this side. And now all I have to do is take this, which you buy at the dollar store. I believe you can buy it at Dollar Tree as well, but I'm not sure. We buy it at Dollarama here in Canada. And I'm just going to I cut a strip of it, and now I'm just going to go around the edges with my trusty glue gun. I know you can't see what I'm doing well because of the camera angle, but again, it's so simple. You just take it, put a little bead of glue down there, and then this just covers all of your edges up perfectly. I'm just going to finish off the top, the rest of the side and the top. You know, for this whole project I used, I think, about 4 small sticks of glue. I know some of you out there have those big professional glue guns. I'm quite envious of, actually. But, you know, I'm not really a great crafter, so do I need to spend all that extra money on it? Probably not. Okay, let me just cut this off. Probably shouldn't be using my good material scissors, but nonetheless, I just did. Okay, I'll be right back. I'll clean off my fingers and I'll be right back. So off camera, on the back side of this one, I just added some of these little gold sequins to the back so that the backs look the same. Isn't that pretty? And then this is the finished front end of the one that we worked on today. So I really hope that you enjoyed taking a look at my first Christmas project for 2020. Now, I have not really confirmed what I'm going to call this series, which is why when you see the thumbnail, you won't see a name to the series. And although I have an idea of where I think I'm leaning, I thought I would ask you, what do you think I should call my 2020 Christmas series? Leave me a comment down below, and you may be thinking along the same lines as I am, or you may come up with something even better than what I thought of. So if you have not already done so, I would certainly appreciate it if you would subscribe, and thank you if you do, and thank you if you already have. Share this video with people who love to decorate for Christmas as much as we do. Don't forget that thumbs up, that helps my channel grow. And so until next week, when you get to see exactly where these beauties are going to be hung.
I wonder how many of you already know exactly where those beauties are going to be hung. Some of you know me so well, and you can guess what's coming next week. I certainly hope you come back and join us for this Christmas 2020 series.